through me and you.
A warm welcome to everyone joining us today. How are you doing? I had a fantastic day so far. I want to welcome you and say my heartfelt gratitude for taking our time to be a part of today's conversation. And on behalf of Skill Build Initiative, I want to sincerely thank you for joining us for this important national youth consultation, contributing to the global CSW70 process. A very important conversation. First of all, I would like to acknowledge our distinguished guests and speakers, also our partners, our institutional representatives, and most especially our participants, persons with disabilities, whose voices are the heart of today's conversation. Welcome. Now, Skill Build Initiative is taking our time, it's to do this conversation, contributing to the National Youth Consultation for the global CSW70 process. But Skill Build Initiative is also a youth-focused, disability-inclusive organization that is committed to empowering young people, especially persons with disabilities, through skills development, advocacy, and access to opportunities. And at the heart of our work, it's our belief that every young person, regardless of ability, deserves equal access to education, justice, leadership, digital inclusion, and economic empowerment. And this centers on promoting disability inclusion, strengthening youth capacity, amplifying youth and young voices, and advocating for fair systems that leave no one behind. Skill Build Initiative is leading this national consultation because access to justice still remains a major challenge for young women with disabilities in Nigeria. While laws and frameworks may exist, many young people still face discrimination, barriers, and exclusion in seeking justice and support. And through the CSW70 process, we are ensuring that the lived experiences of Nigerian youths, especially young women with disabilities, are reflected in global conversation on gender issues. Today's consultation is part of our commitment, turning lived realities into global recommendations. And for this purpose, we're going to have some ground rules in place while we have the conversation going, while we have our guest speakers come on board. So I'm going to make sure that these ground rules, you know about them. But first of all, because of this objective is lending voices to young women globally, especially persons with disabilities, I will incline that you pay attention to this conversation all through from the beginning to the end. So what your major objective should be is to listen. Listen carefully to both expert perspectives and lived experiences. That way you'll be able to identify real and practical barriers that young women face in accessing justice. And most importantly, recommend to people, make sure that they know about the conversation that's ongoing, especially this conversation in helping Nigerian women contribute to the CSW70 process. So our ground rule number one will be kindly respect all speakers and participants. We are really big on that. This is a safe place. And even as it's a safe place, we strive on respect. Respect is very, very important. And when you're joining or have network challenges where you're probably disconnected and you have to rejoin, please mute your microphone when you are not speaking and when you come in, so that you don't distort our speakers and that way affect the flow of conversation. We will maintain time discipline so everyone can be heard. We will definitely try as much as possible to take all questions. And if by any chance your questions are not being read or answered, we will try as much as possible to reach out to you privately to make sure you get clarity or answers to any questions you might bring up. And most importantly, like I have said and will emphasize again, this is a safe, inclusive, and non-judgmental space where every voice is valued. Now, the CSW70 is having a 70th session of the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. It's a global platform where governments, civil society organizations, and stakeholders come together to review process, identify gaps, and shape global policies that advance the rights of women and girls. And this year focuses on the realities of many young women, especially young women with disabilities, whose access to justice is still limited by physical barriers, economic hardship, social stigma, and weak support system. In Nigeria, we have laws and policies that speak to rights and protection. However, many young women with disabilities still struggle to report abuse, access legal remedies, receive follow-up support, or even be believed when they seek justice. This shows us the clear gap between policies on paper and lived experiences on the ground. Today's consultation matters, and because the voices in the room represent real experiences, real challenges, and real solutions, what we will discuss today will not stay just in this meeting, but it will be shaped into recommendations that will contribute to Nigeria's voice at the global CSW70 process. This is our opportunity to ensure that young women with disabilities are not only spoken about, but truly represented in global decision making. I want to say a big thank you again to everyone. And at this point, I would like to formally introduce our contributors for today's national consultation. Each of them will be leading one key area of discussion that will form part of our CSW70 recommendations. And our first contributor is Barrister Confidence. She's a legal practitioner and policy advocate. She will be speaking on the theme of eliminating discriminatory laws and policies, and inclusive and equitable legal systems. Our contribution will help us understand the legal and policy gaps affecting access to justice for young women with disability. And our second contributor is Eva Chukwunelo, a disability rights advocate. She will be addressing the theme of structural barriers to access justice and disability inclusion across justice systems. She will be sharing from our leaders' work. Our third distributor will come from Group C, our community and institutional input group. This group consists of 3 persons with disabilities, representative from the School for the Blind, Afaruku, I'm sorry, and I'm trying to pronounce that name correctly, Afarachuku, and the group will be led by Barrister Chinyere. And this will be contributing under the theme of access to remedy and support services.
ordinary children going off to war. 'Cause no single leader is worth dying for. No ordinary mother would cry herself to sleep. 'Cause no
Access to, we're having Barrister Chinyere. I'll be contributing under the theme of access to remedy and support services under our lead. Each contributor will help us shape one focused recommendation of Nigeria's CSW70 submission. So, show of hands in the chat box. Please put your hands together for every contributor to today's discussion. And please, let's appreciate our Barrister Chinyere. Let's also appreciate Eva for joining us today to, give us from their expert knowledge and their wealth of knowledge and share their experiences with us just to contribute to today's conversation. We will appreciate you, Barrister. We appreciate you, Eva, for taking out time to be a part of this conversation. And we hope that as you contribute to the CSW70 process, that we will make not just an impact in Nigeria, but a global impact and affect the lives of women with disability, that would lend their voices, give them, amplify their voices, and let them be heard, and get the leading, the justice, the advocacy that they need and deserve. Thank you very much for joining us in this conversation. So we're going to open the floor right now and allow Barrister Chinyere take over the conversation, and we move from there. My name is Joy Udor, and I'm your moderator for today's session. Over to you, Barrister. Over to you, Barrister Confidence.
Okay. Thank you. I thought I heard Barrister Chinyere, so I was waiting for the person to take the lead till I hear my name. Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear, Barrister Confidence.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Special greetings to the host and the moderator of today's program. It's really a privilege to be here once again to join in this second episode of this program of the Skill Build Initiative. Thank you for having me. So this morning we are going to be looking at I've been given a topic, a sub-theme title, and it's going to address eliminating discriminatory laws and policies and inclusive and equitable legal system. So I want to talk about eliminating discriminatory laws and policies. So eliminating discriminatory laws and policies is a crucial step towards creating a more inclusive and equitable society. In Nigeria, there are efforts to address discriminatory laws and policies, particularly those that affect women, children, and marginalized group. Well, there has been a lot of improvements in our system in terms of getting inclusion. So some initiatives have come up and some of the reviews, and that I would like to talk about them. We have the steps that have been taken, reviewing and repealing laws. In Nigeria, take for instance, the National Assembly has been working to review and repeal laws that discriminate against women, such as the Marriage Act and the Penal Code. And just recently, too, there has been reforms in trying to get more women join in politics. So these are the steps that our lawmakers have taken to ensure inclusion of women in the politics and every other thing in the policy making. They will have laws like promoting gender equality. The government has launched initiatives to promote gender equality and empower women, including the National Gender Policy and the Women Empowerment Program. So these things are very effective, and we just have to see how we can maximize this opportunity to be included. One thing is for people to be given opportunity, the law to set it out. Another thing is for them to maximize the opportunity that has been given. Some people don't even know some of these things, and I think it's time we are aware of it and take steps to maximize the opportunity. Another step is protecting children's rights. The government has enacted laws to protect children's rights, including the Child Rights Act and the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. There is this act, is effective. People are using it every now and then. So when you get this act, you look at it, you study it, the rights are all embedded there. So it's also a part of having inclusion. And worthy of note is that UN, United Nations Women, welcomed the recently published general recommendation number 33 of women access to justice. This is a very welcomed development by the Committee on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. That is the CEDAW. This was adopted in late July. So it's just like what we're doing here right now. This is part of the contribution towards the CSW, that is the Commission on the Status of Women. So this is an assignment. We're not wasting time here. Part of what we are going to contribute, they will also look at it. It could form part of the recommendations they're going to make. So these things are, it's just like putting out a survey out there, and people are making their contribution, they are making impact, they are giving you opinions based on their own side, based on their countries, and you look at it, you x-ray it and see what you can pick out for the United Nations, which will comprise of this. Of course, there are these united countries that make up United Nations, and having some of these countries give their opinion will help in making good recommendation. So these are part of the things, the steps UN too has taken to ensure that our voices are heard, and that whatever we have made out, maybe the research we have made out or the surveys we've carried out in our own individual countries, in our countries, is also imputed in the UN law, which will govern this particular country. So this eliminating discriminatory laws and policies has come to stay. And while we are believing that this recommendation works, we are believing that the policies will really be effective. The policies that will be made from it. Well, more works needs to be done to eliminate discriminatory laws and policies. Just to say that the provision of the Nigerian laws and the effects, the steps Nigerians are taking, and also in addition with what UN is doing, shows how the international space and the national space is very serious with eliminating discriminatory laws and policies. So I'm going to talk about the steps that needs to be taken or are currently being taken to enhance this this eliminating discriminatory laws and policies. They are strengthening of institutions. So, like building the capacity of institutions to implement and enforce laws and policies that promotes equality and non-discrimination. We're going to talk about also raising awareness in terms of educating the public about the importance of equality and non-discrimination. Then you have supporting advocacy, encouraging and supporting advocacy efforts to promote equality and challenge discriminatory laws and policies. Now I'm going to talk about the inclusive and equitable legal system. The inclusive and equitable legal systems are essential for ensuring that all individuals have access to justice and are treated fairly under the law. I may want to underline the word fairly, because we know that this discrimination is very serious. So you can't be saying that you are including them without treating them fairly. So fairness is very essential. Now in Nigeria, efforts are being made to strengthen the legal system and promote inclusivity and equity. Now, some initiatives or several strategies that can be effective in this pursuit include judicial reforms. I'm going to talk about the judicial reforms. I'm going to talk about the legal reform. So the judicial reforms, the Nigerian judiciary has introduced reforms to improve access to justice, including the establishment of specialized courts and alternative dispute resolution mechanism. This is very serious because most states now have a multi-door courthouse where alternative dispute resolution mechanisms are being taken care of, not just litigation, everything. So some reforms have been done by the judiciary to introduce access to justice. So these people that are being even discriminated upon, sometimes they need advocacy most times when they try to access the judicial system. And the judicial reform is to also show that they have access like every other person to access the court. Then you have someone will ask, what is the difference between the judicial reform and the legal reforms? Well, legal reforms, I would say, it has to do with advocating for changes in laws that institutionalize discrimination, including civil rights legislation, anti-discrimination laws, and equal opportunity policies. So it's just a thin line between the two of them. At the end of the day, they are just reforms that has to do with inclusivity and eliminating discriminatory laws and policies. Then you have the legal aid. The government has established legal aid program to provide access to justice for vulnerable groups, including women, children, and the poor. So we can say that some people are scared of going to the court because of the cost implication. Some of them can't afford to pay a lawyer to represent them in court and all of that. So, but with these legal aid provisions, which the government has also taken steps to provide, it makes it easier for these people who can't afford to pay a lawyer to represent them to have access to justice. So even the women, even the poor, the vulnerable can access legal aid. So these are part of the reforms the government have made. We also have anti-corruption efforts. The government has launched anti-corruption initiatives to promote transparency and accountability in government and the legal system. I'm going to I'm going to use the EFCC, for instance. All of us, we know what the function of the EFCC is. Sometimes when people are most times, of course, is that when people are involved in fraud and all of that, the EFCC looks at that. The whole essence is to watch corruption. So, and there are also other commissions that the state has made so that corruption can be watched. Imagine where maybe you were defrauded and they're telling you a good amount of money to, to handle your case, even from the police level, and it's very high on you. So government is taking extra step to make provision for this anti-corruptions and all of that. So you have the Human Rights Commission too. The National Human Rights Commission has been strengthened to promote and protect human rights in Nigeria. And I want to say that even today, there is a human rights program going on today. So these are the steps the government have taken, even private individuals too, who have NGOs, just like what Skill Build Initiative is doing. So there are also some legal aid organization, foundations, and all of that that are also in charge of seeing that people's rights are not being trampled upon. So like when people have their rights is being infringed upon, they assess these human rights commissions and they look into it and handle their matters. And I want to also say that this human rights is takes women's affairs and girls' affairs seriously, especially when it has to do with child rights acts and women affairs. So that's it for that. We also have the education and training, providing educational programs that promotes diversity, equity, and inclusion within communities and organizations to raise awareness about the impact of discrimination. This is also a step towards that. We have the policy review, conducting reviews of current policies and practices at local, state, and federal levels to identify and amend those that contribute to discrimination. We also have the community advocacy, mobilizing community groups to advocate for change, including engaging with lawmakers, organizing protests, and raising public awareness. Why do I say this? Because we can be saying all of these are in arts, they are in laws, and if it doesn't get to the grassroots, which is the community, I don't know. I don't know if the impact will be really felt. It's just like let's take for instance, just like saying that you have a company produces let's say edibles or whatever it is that the company produce, and it doesn't get to the retailer, it doesn't get to the consumers. So if it stops at the wholesalers and the retailers doesn't get it, how will it now get to the consumers? So what I'm saying in essence is not about having these laws in on papers documented and all of that. The community has to experience it. And how are they going to experience it? In their own local ways, in their own communities, mobilizing community groups to advocate for change. Just like saying there are new laws, so the laws, who will now be partakers of the laws? The community people. So there has to be community advocacy and awareness, so that these people can also know that the laws which has been made for them, they are supposed to embrace it and be part of it. So I'm going to talk about the support system, establishing support system for marginalized group, including legal aid organization, mentorship programs, and community resources. There is also data collection. Collecting and analyzing data on discrimination can help identify patterns and inform policy changes. you know just like we can say one or two things that happen, but when we now go to these people, let's say the disabled, you interview them, say, okay, what are the challenges you have, what do you think can be done to solve some of these problems. You are putting it out there for them, because they are the ones that wear the shoe. They know where it pains them the more. So they are the best people that these surveys can get to, and you get an accurate feedback. So this data collection is very important. It will help identify the patterns and inform the policy changes. We have collaboration, partnering with government and non-governmental organizations to promote initiatives that seek to eliminate discrimination. Private individuals have taken a lot of steps in fixing up where the government cannot really, the work is so big that we cannot just leave it for the government alone. And that is why the private individuals have taking steps in where they have passion for, to see that they have their NGOs registered, the aims and objectives are there, the visions are there, and to help in putting out some of these things out there and seeing how to solve people's problem. And that is where this collaboration comes in. They can partner with the government and even non-governmental organizations to promote initiatives that seek to eliminate discrimination. Some people are passionate about some things. They have the money, but they cannot maybe leave their jobs and other things to start doing it. So once this initiative, they see what they do, the social media is also helping. You see a lot of people on the social media, they advertise what they do, and people from all walks of life reach out to them. Even people they have not seen, people in diaspora reach out to them because they are sure that once they give out their money, these people can reach out to the people they intend to. Just like what skill building initiative is doing, trying to reach out to the disabled. So it's a step in the right direction, and collaboration is really, really appreciated. Then I'm going to talk about the public awareness campaign, running campaigns to educate the public about discrimination and promote inclusivity. So the truth is that this stigma, this discrimination sometimes cannot be entirely waived. Let me take, for instance, the time when HIV, when it was new and it was on the rampage. So when people hear that someone has HIV, you don't even want to get close to them. You don't even want to share anything with them. In fact, some people had the mentality that when you even talk with them, that you have contacted it already. So, but it took awareness. It took awareness for people to understand that by talking to them, you don't get it. You can get it only when maybe you share sharp objects with them that has to have to do with blood infusion. Maybe you use the syringe they use, or use the razor blade, some of these sharp objects that when you now use it with them, that's when blood can pass through, blood can exchange, and maybe there's possibility of contaminating this thing. But before that, before we had this awareness, the stigma was on them. In fact, some of them committed suicide. But now, even people who have HIV can comfortably tell you they have HIV, and they are not being stigmatized. You understand? So because of public awareness campaign, so public awareness campaign is very, very important. It goes a long way in educating the public, making them to know that okay, these things are there, and there are laws which have been put in place to protect you against discrimination, and there are policies that have been made already. It's just for you to know what that is inside it. Okay, just like also I would say we have the Nigerian Constitution, which has a lot of things inside it, the rights, the obligation, and all of that. Your fundamental human rights are there in chapter 4 of the Constitution. But if you don't read it, if you don't know what is in it, or maybe you don't have somebody to tell you, okay, this is what your rights are, your rights will be trampled upon, and you don't even know, because you don't know that the constitution has protected your rights. So public awareness is very important, cannot be overemphasized. So that's that. So by combining legal action, grassroots movements, educational initiatives, and public awareness campaign, communities can work towards the elimination of discriminatory laws and policies. I don't know if I should also go ahead with some of the things I've prepared, or am I giving room for some other person to talk?
Okay, Barrister Confidence, I think we could just use like 5 minutes more. You could touch on it a little bit, and then we'll proceed from there.
All right, that's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to talk about the reforming discriminatory laws and strengthening access to justice system in Nigeria. Reforming discriminatory laws and strengthening access to justice systems are crucial for promoting equality and human rights in Nigeria. Some efforts have been made, and some of these efforts include reviewing and repealing laws that discriminate against women, children, and marginalized groups, strengthening institutions such as the Judiciary and Human Rights Commission, increasing access to justice, particularly for vulnerable groups, promoting awareness and education about human rights and the law. And the Nigerian government has taken steps such as enacting laws like the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act and the Child Rights Act, establishing institutions like the National Human Rights Commission and the National Commission for Women, launching initiatives to promote access to justice and human rights. However, challenges still persist, and some of these challenges are the limited resources and capacity, corruptions and inefficiency, limited awareness and understanding of human rights. So that's that. Now I'm going to talk about the focus areas. I've been given focus areas. Eliminating discriminatory laws and policies for family law, inheritance, marriage and consent laws, harmful cultural and legal practices, gender bias in statutory and customary system, initiate inclusive and equitable legal system, removing barriers for persons with disabilities, language, interpretation, accessibility, documentation challenges, access to legal aid and supportive services. So let me just pick, well, they are actually interconnected, but I'm going to summarize that part. For family law in Nigeria is a complex mix of statutory and customary laws. And for family laws, you have like some of these key areas. They include the marriage laws, um, the divorce and custody, the inheritance, child rights. So for the marriage laws, different laws govern marriage, including the Marriage Act, the customary marriage, and the Islamic marriage. So what works for the East may not work for the North, what works for the North may not work for the South or the West, as the case may be. So they have their laws which guide them, and of course, every state or region is governed by their law. So there is diversity in that. We have the divorce and custody. Laws vary depending on the type of marriage and jurisdiction. So if, let's say, somebody marries under the Act and somebody married in a customary way, their method is actually different. I could say I'm from Igbo, so I'm going to use my tribe, for instance. Like if you're talking about divorce in a customary way, the bride price of the woman can just be returned. That way, you have just informed her people that you are no longer interested in this marriage. So returning of bride price is just it. Then it's different from the marriage under the act, because that one has to do with divorce, and it has its own procedure which must be followed. So it all depends on the type of marriage and jurisdiction. Then you have the inheritance. Laws differ for different communities, with some customary laws being discriminated. Now, let me talk about this. Let me talk about this because most times you see women are being
Apologies, I think we're having a little bit of network glitch from our speakers network. We hope that she'll recover from that quickly, and we'll continue on the conversation. While we await our joining again, so that she gives us this law and gives some more understanding on the conversation so far, we would invite.
I'm here.
All right. Sorry, Master Confidence. We're not able to a little bit. I don't know if your network is much better now, so that you could continue.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Over.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I was talking about the inheritance. Yes. So for some persons are against girl child when it comes to inheritance. But it's very good to say that some states recently have also made policies, have also included in their laws that women should have inheritance from their father's house. I know of Abia State, which was recently done, I think in 2023. Yes, it has been put into law that okay, it's not enough that you just marry and you don't have anything in your father's house. So when these states do this thing and other states hear it, they are also encouraged to domesticate some of these laws in theirs, so that women and children will not be discriminated upon. Very important. So you have the child rights. The Child Rights Act provides protection, but implementation is a challenge. There are so many cases on child rights. Well, it has provided it, but we are still believing that the judiciary and the state entirely will also ensure that it's not just about having laws, but having it implemented. So there are also other specific issues. We have like age of consent. The age of consent varies, with some laws allowing marriage at 18, while others allow it earlier with parental consent. So I saw something online recently, a lady that married at age of 13, and I don't know if you, if you saw it, and she married somebody of about 35 years. So what is the law saying about 13 years? And somebody who is 35, who is an adult. So what does the constitution provide? At what age is someone an adult? The constitution provides that at 18 years, you can be said to be an adult, even though the Matrimonial Causes Act said 21. So now some people can marry even earlier than 18 years. So some places it works, some places it does not work. Some people will see it as abuse. You are abusing the child because the child is still an infant. I'll call it somebody that is not an adult. So it's a child. So that is where in some places you call it child abuse, while in some places it can work with the consent of both families. So different things work for different people. So you also have polygamy. Polygamous marriage are allowed under certain laws, raising concerns about women's rights. Meanwhile, in some places, it is not allowed. Some person will tell you one man, one wife. Why some people, even if they marry one wife, it's not enough. They have to make it up to 10. You know, I don't know. So polygamy and all of that. So we have inheritance rights. Some laws and customs deny women equal inheritance rights. So that's for that. And please permit me, let me rush. I know there are other people waiting to talk, but I'm going to talk about the impact of discriminatory family laws on women and girl child.
Okay, please, could we just run that up in 2 minutes because we're trying to be time conscious and finish at the exact time since we emphasized on time discipline now.
Okay, that's beautiful. Um, The impact of discriminatory family laws on women and children in Nigeria, the current family in Nigeria have sufficient impact on women and girls, perpetuating inequality and vulnerability. Some of these barriers to reporting, lack of awareness about the rights and laws. We have fear of social stigma, rejection and violence. We have limited access to support services and legal aid, have corruption and inefficiency in the judicial system. Under legal invisibility, we have women often lack legal identity or recognition, making it hard to access justice or services. Limited property and inheritance rights, no representation in decision-making process. But I want to say that Nigeria is really trying because so many laws have been put in place now to see that women are also included in the policy making. So we have increased vulnerability to abuse, exposure to domestic violence, child marriage, and female genital mutilation. We have limited access to education and economic opportunities. We have risks of being trapped in abusive relationship due to lack of alternatives. This is very important. So the issues are often interconnected, making it harder for women and girls to escape cycles of violence and inequality. So there are other things I have in place, but because of our time, I'll have to leave for other speakers to talk. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Barrister Confidence. We appreciate you for doing justice to that conversation as regards eliminating discriminatory laws and policies. You definitely highlighted everything that needed to be highlighted in making the inclusive community, especially women in inclusive community, persons with disability, to understand these legal systems, to understand especially equitable legal systems, and note the policy gaps and identify them that are affecting justice. You threw more light. And funny enough, what stood for me in your in this conversation when you were giving your knowledge and expertise was the part where you mentioned about public awareness campaign. And it just struck me that it's not just streamlined to the government alone. We could also, take our time personally to let people know, apart from the private enterprises, just like Skill Build is doing, to let the inclusive community, to help people in the inclusive community get the awareness they need and the justice they need. We could also help personally. So we could be in a space where somebody is going through something and stand for the person or refer them to this NGOs or people that are also standing out in that gap to help women in the inclusive community get justice or give amplify. Thank you very, very much. We really appreciate you for that fantastic session. All right about now, we're going to be talking about our second contributor, and that's the person of Eva Chukunelu, a disability rights advocate, and she will be addressing the theme of structural barriers to accessing justice and disability inclusion across justice systems. And she will be sharing from our own experience and advocacy work. With a show of hands in the chat box, please welcome our next contributor, Eva Chukunelu. Over to you, Eva. It's good to have you here today.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me. I'm so sorry that I won't be turning on my camera. I actually look like a mess, so I won't be turning on my camera. I'm so sorry. Yes. Okay, so Barrister Chinyere spoke a whole lot about, like, she covered every aspect, and I was just listening to her talk and talk all over again. And I think she covered a lot, especially with regards to law and legal frameworks that really protect persons with disabilities. And it's really important for us as disabled people to know our rights and to ensure that the laws that are already put in place works for us. Okay. I'm going to speak as someone who has the lived realities. So I'm not really good with legal jargons. So I'm more of like a creative person, but I'm going to speak as someone who has lived realities. And I've had to navigate like justice systems or even public attitudes and digital spaces, and come to realize that these spaces were never designed with women or young persons with disabilities in mind. So earlier this year, let me fast forward to last year. So last year ending in November, we converged in Ethiopia in the African Union, and we were to talk about the Beijing Plus 30. So since 1995, every 5 years, there is what is called the Beijing Platform for Action. And it talks about the reviews that were made, or rather the legal frameworks that were made to protect women's rights. And it was signed in Beijing in 1995. So for this Beijing stuff, it's one of like the most important global roadmap for women's rights. And it's one thing that we discussed about this year at the UN, and we spoke about it last year. So while we were having discussions last year, we discussed about the 12 critical areas that were highlighted as a result of that meeting in 1995. And we realized that as much as these areas they are very important, we realized that the solutions, or rather the issues that were peculiar to persons with disabilities, women with disabilities, were not highlighted. So we had like cluster of women with disabilities that were present in that meeting, and we had to talk about the fact that my experience is not highlighted in this document, and there is a need for women with disability to be in these spaces and for their voices to be heard. So that's what the Beijing Plus 30 is about, and this year marked 30. So the next meeting is going to be in the next 5 years, which is Beijing Plus 35. So it's part of the CSW, but it's not all about the CSW. So while we were having that discussion, I realized that there were things that were missing, which has to do with our data. We don't have accurate data of persons with disabilities. Let me just come down to Nigeria. I don't even want to talk about Africa, but we don't have accurate data of persons with disabilities in Nigeria. And when you don't have data, you cannot talk about policies accurately, because if you talk about policies, who are they making these policies for? What are the peculiar challenges of these people that you're trying to make policies for? Because you don't know how many they are. You don't know their individual challenges. You don't even know their age bracket. You don't even know their gender. So we don't have accurate data of persons with disabilities in Nigeria. Talk less of data of women with disabilities in Nigeria. And that thing that is missing from this whole discussion is the fact that our voices are rarely heard. So even if you hear representation of persons with disabilities or representation of women with disabilities in this kind of discussions is always like a sprinkling. You hardly see these women's voices or their issues represented because they are never in these rooms. And even if they are invited in these rooms, let's say you have like a gathering of 100 women, it's always a ratio of 95 to 5. 5 of these persons are persons with disabilities. 95 of these persons are persons without disabilities. So you would not be able to get that accurate issue that is peculiar to women with disabilities. And for me, I feel like if we can actually handle things from the aspect of knowing what solutions we can kind of like bring up in terms of handling issues that are peculiar to women with disabilities. If you are able to bring up these solutions, then definitely it works for other women. But when you bring these solutions for just women without disabilities, you come to realize that you might not be able to handle the issue of women with disabilities because they kind of like are the most vulnerable sect in every vulnerability triangle, women with disabilities and children with disabilities. And as a woman with a disability, two things you experience is ableism and sexism. You have to deal with people who are not disabled and how they treat you. And then you have to deal with the gender aspect of being a woman. So there's like layers of vulnerability. So that's one of the things that is missing, which is our voice, our data. And the last thing is the lived experiences of disabled women. You can't take care of me if you don't know what I am experiencing. You can't take care of me or give me a solution if you don't even know my problem. So you are just doing like guesswork. Oh, I think this person has this issue. I think since they're all disabled women, I think they have the same kind of issues. As much as we might have one familiar issue, which is stigmatization or discrimination, there are other layers of issues that different women with disabilities have, which is why we have clusters. We have clusters of persons with physical disabilities. Even under the physical disabilities, we have people who use wheelchair. We have amputees. We have different kinds of physical disabilities. We have people with neurological kind of disabilities. We have people with, I think different kinds of disabilities exist, meaning that their lived experiences differ. So we need to bring people, representatives from these clusters and know what their issues are and know how to come up with solutions that would kind of like focus on their needs. When we're talking about this whole thematic discussions, which has to do with gender-based violence, economic justice, digital safety, and political participation, you always realize that voices of women with disabilities, they're never present. So I remember, I don't know if we know Lois Alter. So Lois Alter is a disabled woman. She uses a wheelchair and she's very keen on politics and she has run for office before. And she didn't get the support she needed because she had a disability. People rarely even vote in men who have disabilities. That I was reading about was this former president of Nigeria, of America, I think it's John Kennedy or so. I realized that he had polio. But if you're reading through history, if you're like watching his videos, his disability was never mentioned because people, when they notice that you have a disability, they automatically cancel you in the fact that you cannot be a leader. You can't come and lead me as a disabled person, come and lead a country that has people who don't have disabilities. So people have that mindset. So you hardly see women with disabilities leading in politics or even in other spaces, which is an issue. So this means that we are not seen. And when we are not seen, it means our needs are not reflected in every document. So whatever document that is being prescribed, even in the UN, while I was in the UN this year, I was speaking for disabled persons. And after my talk, so my first panel discussion was to adolescents. And so while I was speaking to these adolescents, some of them came to me. Some of these young girls that came to me were girls from developed nations, girls from America, girls from other parts of the world that have systems and structures working for them. And they were still crying the fact that they have never, they never thought that a person with a disability could actually be on that stage and talking about their issues. And I just wondered, what have we been speaking for since the first CSW session till the 69th session, which was this year? What have we been advocating for? If we're advocating for gender, or rather, if we're advocating for women's rights, even in that women's rights, we rarely advocate for the rights of women and girls with disabilities. So it just shows you that there is this hierarchy or there is this division in terms of advocacy. So there's a need for all those things to change. So I think this meeting matters because we need to highlight the peculiar challenges that relate to other persons with disabilities. So I will speak from my own lived experiences and probably get from my other friends who are not present. But we need, in the larger run, UN aside, we need to try to find a level ground where we are able to get representatives from different clusters of disability and get to hear what their issues are, peculiar to their own kinds of disabilities. So I'm going to talk about structural barrier and what structure and what justice looks like from my own perspective. So one of the structural barrier we have as a disabled person is transportation. For me personally is navigating road systems and transportations. I use a prosthetic device, so I might not have issues with going to places or climbing a bike or getting into a keke or even entering or struggling with other pedestrians for buses. I might do that easily, but I might also have issues with that because it strains me. So imagine someone who uses a wheelchair. I have a friend who uses a wheelchair. She always uses boats to navigate the Abuja. Like she doesn't use public system. So imagine she experiences a kind of injustice, or let's say she experiences let's say GBV, or she's assaulted at home, and let's say she's married, she's assaulted by her husband, and then she wants to report to like a police or something. One of the things that they normally do to disabled women is that they take off everything that would act like a protection for them. So they rip them off of all their economic power. So they take out the money that you have. Now, as someone who uses a wheelchair and who doesn't navigate public systems or public transportation systems because it is not built with persons, it's not built with for persons like her, persons who uses wheelchair. So now imagine she wants to go to the nearest police station and she needs to use, let's say, a keke, or she needs to use a public transportation system. She can't do that. She needs to use a boat, and boat rides in Abuja are very expensive. And now she doesn't have the money. She doesn't have the access to go to report these issues. So this shows you that even transportation system is a barrier, it's a structural barrier for disabled women, because when transportation is inaccessible, it means mobility is restricted. And when your mobility is restricted, you will not be able to do things as you want to do as a normal person. Another thing is public buildings. So I remember, I'm sorry, I'm going to use more stories. So I remember some years back, I went to one of the ministries in Abuja here. I can't remember the ministry. And it had 17 floors. And when I got into the building, I was like, okay, please, where's the elevator? Because I needed to use the elevator. I could not, I think I was to meet the person in the 10th floor or something like that. And I was like, okay, I need to use the elevator. I went to the elevator and the security came and said, no, that the elevator has not been working, that we need to use the stairs. So I was with my friend and she was just laughing at me. She was like, sorry. That's the only thing she could say. She just told me sorry. And we had to climb, like we climbed. Like every time I get to like the next step, I'm breathing like somebody that was chased in a dream. Like I'm just breathing hard until I got to the 10th floor. So it shows you that imagine you have I can access building because I use a prosthetic leg. So imagine someone who cannot access this building and they need to do something important in this ministry. This is a public structure, and the public structure is not even accessible to the public itself. So I think there is a public building barrier, which is found in ministries, even in police stations. I've not really entered a police station, but I've seen how the entrances to most of the police stations close to me are. And it's something that most people cannot access. The highest place you can get is probably in front of the building. You can't even enter inside to the reception, talk less of the DPO's office. So you are just stuck in front of the building for waiting for somebody to lift you up or for somebody to carry you to report a case. I think before you even get into that space, if you're exhausted and you don't even want to talk about anything. So I think police stations too are not accessible. The hospitals too. I think some hospitals in Nigeria, because I visited one, I think that was CBN Clinic. So whenever I get into a space, I always try to scan around to see if they have inclusive access ways. So it's kind of like a bad habit for me. But when I got into that space, I scanned around. I was like, how do people who are using wheelchairs enter? And they saw that I was already becoming defensive, and they had to take me to the space and say, okay, this is like a ramp. So I was like, okay, you guys are safe, because I was about to drag people. So they just like, I think they are doing well in hospitals because they know that most of the patients, not even disabled persons, if you are pregnant, you can't walk, you need wheelchair. You need, I think it's roller, they call them, this bed they put people on, and it needs to roll. So you need something that can drive people in. So whenever I talk about accessibility, it's not just for persons with disabilities, it's for people who are weak. And any human being can be weak one day and they can be weak tomorrow. So it's accessibility works for everybody, just that it favors us who have disabilities more. So another thing that is a barrier is public attitude. So when we want to seek justice as a disabled person, how people react to our reporting or our complaint is very funny. It's very, very funny. Most times you don't even want to report. So, like I said, I'm going to be using stories a lot. So I had an experience when I was doing my NYSC. So it was kind of like how will I call it? It was kind of like a sexual assault from a senior staff. So he called me into his office and he was doing some strange things. And so I could not run. I could not even leave his office because I was stuck. I can't run. The reality is that I cannot run. So I was at his mercy. So I think it was just God that saved me. I don't know. But I think God just saved me at that moment. So I had to leave the office. I walked out of the office. And then I told one of my colleagues, one of my fellow NYC person, I told her, this is what Mr. This so person did. Oh. And she was like, Chisom, waiting there your body where they pursue. That was what she said. Like, what is in your body said that they are pursuing like this? I was like, I'm telling you that somebody almost assaulted me. You're telling me what are they seeing in my body that they are pursuing? So it's so funny. So when people say, oh, disabled people actually experience sexual harassment or all those things, they'll say, with this your disabled body, who wants to rape you, who wants to do this to you, who wants to touch you? I remember reading a story from I don't know if it's Tanzania or one of these East African countries, of a girl who had cerebral palsy and she was raped. She was raped. None of the people around her knew she was raped. She got pregnant. It was when she was about to give birth that they found out that she was pregnant. So it shows you that the women with disabilities are more vulnerable when it comes to abuse. Because for people who can't even speak, how do you even tell somebody that, oh, this is the person that raped me? Or let's say you can't even see, how will you see the person you can't even see the person that's abusing you to report that person? So it shows you that they need more protection and they need to be heard, they need to be believed, they need to be protected. And this is something that you rarely see because people believe that as a disabled person, nobody is going to harm you. There's nothing in your body that anybody wants to do anything with. And I think people need to let go of that mindset because they are the most vulnerable when it comes to all forms of abuse. Um, okay, so when it comes to reporting harm and abuse, we have officers who doubt stories. I mean, even when women without disabilities go to the police station to report cases of abuse or so, most officers don't believe them, or they always say, okay, madam, write reports, you pay money and write reports, and they don't even follow up. And it's not just male officers that do this, even female officers do this. And it shows you that um, there is no, I don't know the word to use, but there is no safety, even with the people that are supposed to protect us. So I think the officers or social workers may doubt your stories, especially if you're a disabled woman, or they assume that, oh, we cannot understand what you're saying, or can you talk to us in language you can understand, especially for those who cannot speak. And because of this, most people don't report cases. I don't know if there's like a statistics or a data of uh, gender-based violence against disabled persons. I don't know if there's a data, but I'm sure that even if there is a data, it might be inaccurate because most persons with disabilities, especially women with disabilities, feel like if I share my story, you're not even going to believe it. So what's the need of sharing my story? If you have someone who cannot speak and I want to go to like someone to report a case, how do I talk to you when there's no sign language interpreter? So it shows you that there are many barriers that hinders people, persons with disabilities, from reporting cases of injustices done to them. No sign language interpreter. There is no safe spaces for them because if I even say, okay, I see you as a safe space and I go and tell you something, you might even end up laughing at me. Instead of you empathizing with me, you end up laughing at me because you believe that such a thing can not happen to me. And also, most of these officials are not trained enough to handle reports from disabled person, which I think is another huge barrier. So the only thing that disabled survivors of GBV or any form of injustices can do is just to let go and to move on with their life and live in fear. And I think that's an issue because when you constantly live in fear, you give power to the offender. So I think there's a need to report. There's this case that happened on TikTok. I don't know if you've heard of the celebrity carpenter. So he got married to, she's a disabled woman too. So they've been married and all, and he left to do a surgery. The story is shall long, but he shall came back after 1 year of leaving his family, and he forced his children out of the house, and he took everything from this woman because he believed that, oh, the highest thing she can do is to just shout and cry. Nobody's going to help her. And she came on social media and she started crying. Like that was the only way for her to report this case. She had to come on social media and she was just crying for help, seeking for help from people. And gradually the law took its place because she came to the space. And it's so funny how it's social media that is a safe space for most people, even though we know that social media is a very chaotic space because we have harms that are done on social media. But sadly enough, it's through social media that people are able to get help, which shouldn't be, because I should be able to go to an office or to call a line or a number and say, okay, this is what I'm experiencing. I need help. And help should be able to come to whoever is reporting quickly. So even inside justice system, I think when Barrister Chinyere was talking about the courtrooms and how um, it was not affordable, I've never had to report a case that has to do with getting a lawyer and all that. But I know that it's expensive. I mean, even trying to register an NGO was expensive. So I'm just imagining how much it would be to get a lawyer to defend your case. And courtrooms are not accessible. Most of the court is it proceeds or proceeds I've watched, I don't know the English. So most of the court hearings I've gotten to witness, I have not seen a sign language interpreter. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've not seen a sign language interpreter. So is it assumed that everybody in that room is hearing? Because I feel like if as a disabled person, I go to tell the judge or go to plead my case to the judge, there should be a mediator to be able to kind of like plead thank you to oh what's happening? Yeah. Are you hearing me now? Okay. So I think there should be sign language interpreters in the court, or sitting accommodations that would accommodate people who use wheelchair. Also, there should be support service. I think I'm distracted. I don't know if it's for me.
Good. Sorry about that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so another thing is support services for trauma, gender-based violence, or disability-centered counseling. There needs to be these things put in place, but sadly enough, they are absent. So disabled women end up just staying to themselves because there's nobody to talk to, there's nobody to report a case to, and they end up dying in silence. And in worst cases, even if they access courts or get to plead their cases to a judge, most times these cases are dismissed or they're even delayed. And as a disabled person, you know that you don't even get enough money to take care of your daily needs. Then you're now getting money to be paying for going to the courts, paying for legal help. Although barrister said there was kind of like a system to help people get free legal help. But getting to the court itself is finances, and you don't have money to be going to court to say, okay, the case has been I don't know the word. The case has been what's the word? Adjourned to the next day.
Adjourned.
The case has been adjourned to the next day or so, and you keep coming over and over and again, and it never gets settled. So that's discouraging. So these are structural barriers that kind of like affect persons with disabilities. Then aside the physical structure, we have the digital and technological barriers, which I think is still part of these barriers. A friend of mine, she's an amputee. She posted a picture of her on Twitter, and that picture went viral, and she was dragged. Like people insulted her. People told her nonsense. People told her all kinds of things, and I think for a moment she felt sad. But I mean, for me, I think I've already gotten to that stage in my life where I know that if I'm posting a picture on social media, I'm expecting a kind of reaction from people. And so I'm just ready for the worst thing that could happen. So I really hardly ever get bothered by what these people say. But she was bothered. And I told her that you need to have a tough skin, which is crazy because these people would not stop. So it shows you that there is digital violence against women with disability. I think it's part of the theme for this 16 days activism against GBV. And it has to do with online bullying. I remember Naomi, the lady from Zambia, who has a big nose that was dragged because she had big nose. And she has to tell people that this is my father's structure, like this nose is for my father. If it was a man that had that nose, they will not drag the man. But they dragged her because she was a woman who apparently got these features from her father. And she was dragged. She was trolled on social media. People will body shame you on social media. Oh, why is your body like that? Please don't post these things on social media. I remember when they say Mr. Nkubi, he posts his daughter, who is someone with dwarf. She said she has someone with dwarfism. So they were dragged. It's like, why are you posting your daughter? You're supposed to don't put her to the world, don't show her to the world. And for me, I feel there is a need for these children to actually be seen by the world. Because if you keep hiding these children, one day they will definitely go to the world, like, except you're going to hide them for the rest of their lives. They don't go to school and all those things. But one day this child is going to grow up. This child is going to go to school. This child is going to go to church. This child might find themselves in public spaces and people will still drag them. So it's great when people put out these pictures that might feel uncomfortable, but when you keep putting out these pictures, people begin to realize that, okay, this is actually part of humanity. This is something that could actually exist. I mean, you could even have people who are both, they don't have dwarfism, like they are both tall parents and they would have a child who has that kind of syndrome. And so you don't tell these people to keep hiding. Oh, don't do this. Don't hide that child. The child has albinism. Hide that child. The child is disabled. Hide that child. it's one of the reasons why disability is still seen as a taboo, where people feel like if you're disabled, just hide your disability because you're going to disgust people, irritate people around you. And that has to change. So I think when people body shame persons for having a different kind of body from what the social norm say, or when they misuse images of with the result of AI, people on the internet, I think there was a trend one time where some guys were just picking pictures of celebrities and telling AI to undress these women. I don't know if you guys saw it on Twitter. So it was telling AI, oh, okay, undress this woman, show her with just underwear, show her naked, show her this. And as much as it's AI, it feels cringe because this is your image that people are doing nonsense with. So it just shows you that even the digital spaces are not safe. Talk more for persons with disabilities. And also, there's also a trend of being scammed as a disabled woman. So they always have this perception that, oh, as a disabled woman, you are desperate for anything. And for those who actually fall into their ploy, they scam them and say, okay, they use love to scam them. They just basically, love is just the best way to scam most disabled women. Oh, I'm going to love you. I'm going to do this to you. And when they discover that you have money or you're financially stable, that's how they use this digital media to like scam you of whatever properties you have. So I feel like even digital barriers exist because it's not even a safe space for most women with disabilities or persons with disabilities. Still doesn't mean that you shouldn't use social media because most people feed from social media. In terms of inaccessibility, there are websites for people who are blind or people who have neurological issues. I made some posts and I had a friend and he is autistic and he told me that some of my posts are not accessible. And I was like, I used to do, I do caption for all my pictures. I do transcription for all my videos. What do you want me to do? And he has to start teaching me on how to do use the right fonts or use the right, like it was so much. And I came to realize that there's so much I don't even know, even as a disabled person. And that shows you that there's a huge gap. So talk more of people who aren't disabled. There's so much that they don't know. And there needs to be awareness on how to create websites or um, portals or even apps for people who are visually impaired, hearing impaired, or people who have neurological issues. Then another, I think that's the last inclusion gap, which that's the barrier has to do with systemic barrier. So we have structural barriers, we have that has to do with buildings and technology, but then there's a barrier that has to do with the mind. So one thing is people have this perception that when they see a disabled person, no matter how successful you are, I think that's like the only level ground for persons with disabilities. Because whenever I speak, I always feel like there's a privilege that comes with in disability, like just like you hear pretty privilege or you privilege of having a rich father, even as a disabled person, that privilege exists. There's some disabled people that are very pretty and they get the spotlight because of their pretty. And people come to say, "Oh, why are you disabled? You're so pretty to be disabled. You're so handsome to be disabled." Like I don't know what they mean by that, Sha. But there's privileges that comes with disability. But I think the whole level ground comes to the fact that disabled people, regardless of your money, of your beauty, of whatever it is, they always face stigma and discrimination. And that's something that kind of like levels the whole thing. So, social workers, court staff, or even police, I think they need trainings on how to handle issues that comes from disabled persons. They lack this training and they need to be trained on how to work with disabled survivors. When someone who has experienced a form of injustice come to report to you as a disabled person, you should be able to relate with these people. You should be able to create a safe space for these people. You should be able to welcome them in a way that they can open up. So they lack the training to work with these people. Then also communities discourage reporting due to stigma. I mean, most times, even when most women experience gender-based violence, the communities even tell them, don't report, just endure, pray, do this one, he will change or they will change, this one will happen. So they tell you self without even being disabled that you should learn to endure, forgive, move on. So I wonder what they even tell persons with disabilities. I mean, I know what that colleague of mine told me, even you, like that was that even you, they are doing you like this. So communities need to start realizing that they need to call out those who are offenders, who hurt persons with disabilities, who assault persons with disabilities, and also family leaders, family and local leaders. They need to sometimes encourage protection and not silence, because most times when these things happen to um, their child or a colleague with a disability, they just say, let's just move on and this will happen. Justice will find this cause. So I don't know how they say that thing. Don't report. You will find karma. Karma is a whatever they are saying. So they are encouraging you to just remain silent. Don't report. Don't say anything. And they're not trying to protect you. So I think when they start encouraging you to speak out, who did this to you? What happened? Can you describe this person? And then this person is described, and they go and find this person and ensure that this person faces the law. Then this will show people that offend persons or perpetrate all forms of GBV that there is no safe space for you. Nobody's going to protect you. Nobody's going to enable you. So these are the kind of like systemic barriers that they also face. So with all this I've spoken about, I feel like there are solutions that exist. And one of it is physical access. We need to create accessible structures. I mean, I think for this Disability Rights and Prohibition Act that was passed in 2018, they gave a time frame for structures to become accessible. I don't even think anybody's remembering that. I think it's ending this year or it ended last year. I can't remember. But there is still no public structure that is accessible for persons with disabilities. So I think they need to start with auditing these laws and checking how these public spaces, who has been able to build their structures to be accessible to all kinds of people, whether those that are walking on their two legs or those that are rolling in. How accessible is my public space? How accessible is my space? How accessible is my office? Also, we need to get interpreters or guides or trauma-informed support. We need to ensure that these people are placed in spaces that we have the general public getting into. So in police stations, they should have a sign language interpreter. In the hospitals, they should have a sign language interpreter. In the courts, they should have a sign language interpreter. As long as that place is public space, they should always have sign language interpreters and guides, especially for those who are visually impaired. Then there needs to be training and awareness, just as Barrister Chinyere spoke about awareness. They need to be training and awareness for these people, for every person, for every public worker, for every civil servant. They need to know how to relate, communicate, and interact with persons with disabilities. And also community education and campaigns. When these campaigns are taken to the grassroots, because that's where most of this stigma comes from. We're always doing advocacy in the urban areas to people who are already enlightened and exposed, and then we're leaving those at the grassroots who never get to know that, okay, this child has a child with albinism, but they are not to be used for sacrifice. They can actually have a future and become a lawyer or a doctor and all those things. So when they go to these grassroots spaces and advocate and create awareness that this is called a disability, and you don't have to discard a child because the child has a disability, it kind of like changes their perception and works on their mindset. Another thing is digital inclusion. We need to create tools to protect people against online abuse, whether it's disabled persons or non-disabled persons. There need to be tools created to protect people who use online spaces. I think there's a country, I'm not sure whether it's Poland or so. They are the first country to bring a law where children who are under 18 are not permitted to use the internet. I don't know which country, that is Poland or so. They're not permitted to use the internet until they're 18 years old. So it shows you that there's like continuous effort to protect these young people because they are very, very susceptible to all forms of violence online because most of them, if you check social media in Nigeria, it's mostly young persons who are even under 16 that are using TikTok and Instagram, and they are very, very open to all forms of abuse and vulnerable situations. Then another thing, my last point is representation. Representation is key to any issue. And if we don't have disabled persons in these spaces, in these consultations, in committees, in places where decision making is taking place, then I don't think whatever we're doing is going to make sense because we need disabled persons as policymakers. I was reading about our senator and how we have 109 senators in Nigeria. And out of that 109 senators, maybe I'm wrong, but none of them have a disability. So I then wonder, how do they even discuss issues that pertain to persons with disabilities when there's not even one representation of persons with disabilities in the senatorial house? So we don't have a senator who is key on speaking about disabled persons and their needs and their challenges. I mean, Kenya is doing so much. We have Senator Crystal. I don't know if you've heard of Senator Crystal. She's a young person. I don't think she's up to 35. Senator Crystal is visually impaired and she's a senator in Kenya. She's speaking about issues pertaining to women with disabilities, persons with disabilities, creating systems and kind of like making people see the loopholes that exist. But in Nigeria, we don't have these things, and which is one of the reasons why disability matters kind of like, it's like we're preaching to the choir, we are telling the same people the same thing. It's falling on deaf ears. They just make laws to make us happy. We clap. Oh, they've already accepted this law. It's now going to be turned into a bill, but it's never going to be implemented. So I think we need to ensure that in these policy rooms, policy making rooms, we have disabled persons who are there to represent us. And another gap that might hinder this is the fact that most disabled people don't even know much about law. Like I recently started learning more about these legal things. It's not so far. Like I even get bored whenever I hear like the whole talk and everything. Like I can sleep just listening to it. But I think it's important that we train the young people who to know more about their legal rights, to know more about legal frameworks that protect disabled persons, to make it interesting enough for them to understand and assimilate it, and to be able for them to talk about issues that might arise in their own communities. So we need to train persons with disabilities to know more about the law, which is very important, to know more about their rights, and to also be in these spaces and speak eloquently about these issues that really like affect their community. So we need representations. And when we have representation, I think everything is just going to be a little bit like it's going to be better. I wouldn't say it to be perfect, but it's going to be better because we have somebody who is representing the community in the Senate House. So I think for the long run, we need a person with a disability who is a policy maker, who is always talking about issues that are peculiar to persons with disabilities before the Senate president. So I don't know if I should talk about my recommendation or should I leave it?
Thank you very much, Eva, for that session. We will get to the recommendation later.
Okay.
Have you come?
Thank you.
Really appreciate you for breaking down. I mean, there are many things you mentioned that I totally resonate with in respect to public places, being intentional of having accessible places for persons with disabilities. They have to be intentional. And one thing again, you said that I probably didn't even think about it like that before, but makes total sense and should be considered and even maybe pass as a law is making sure that all these public places, especially law enforcement places, train their personnel on when they have people with disabilities come or persons with disability come, to be able to attend to them, they need to be intentional in training them. There should be a training school, or it should be put in their curriculum where they have to really train them. Because how can they come to your establishment to voice their cases if you can't be able to understand them? So the place of having an instructor or someone that understands sign languages, someone that could help visually impaired persons, it has to be intentional. And these public places should cut across not just law enforcement agencies, but also places like banks too. I mean, persons with disability open accounts, so they have bank accounts, and if they want to bring their cases when they're having troubles, they should be able to pass someone to be able to understand whatever their grievances are and be able to tackle it. So thank you so much for identifying these gaps, mentioning these gaps, and we hope and pray that the awareness that these things you've mentioned and highlighted are being heard and addressed as soon as possible, so that the people in the inclusive community can have advocates help. They can, live more peacefully in our society. Thank you very much for that powerful session. Okay, we are running on time. I mean, we had stipulated that we're going to be time disciplined, but beyond our own power, some certain things, but we're going to try to see how we can round this up. So for our next contributor, and that's the person of Barrister Chinyere. I remember Eva mentioning Barrister Chinyere. Our first contributor was Barrister Confidence. So I think there's a mix up in the name. But now we're having Barrister Chinyere come on, and she's going to be doing a summary of the positions of persons with disabilities, especially from the School of the Blind, Afaruku. She's going to be, pleased because we're time conscious, she's going to be probably doing that for 10 minutes, just talk about their positions, and we will proceed from there. Barrister Chinyere, please, over to you as you help us summarize the positions of the people of the School of People of the Blind, Afaruku, to be precise.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. It's good to have you, Barrister Chinyere.
Thank you. Thank you, moderator. I want to thank Barrister Confidence and Eva. You've really done justice to what we are talking about. Talked about so many things about barriers to accessing justice, different barriers. You've talked about reporting cases of abuse, talked about support system, and the struggles to get help in Nigeria. You've talked about trainings for the players involved, and I must say that the issue of training and orientation cannot be overemphasized. Every player in this topic, it needs orientation. There should be reforming, retraining from those involved, the survivors, down to the families, down to persons living with disability, down to the police, the courts, the public as a whole. We need this need orientation, because I think that's the foundation where this fight starts, fight against discrimination, the fight against, equality when it comes to women living with disabilities. And I must say that justice has been done to it. I don't know how much time I have, so that I will know how to streamline my own talk. Okay, let me.
So that we round up quickly, so that we have
Okay.
questions as well.
Okay. Am I getting questions?
I'm sure there will be questions as regards to your recommendation for the.
Okay. Okay, so let me quickly say something on since we are talking about orientation currently, let me quickly say something on, reporting abuse, reporting discrimination, because when these things are not reported, ever thought about having, what's it called, keeping records of cases. So if these things are not reported, there is no way will be, the government or agencies involved will be able to, identify them, to know the number of, cases that we are handling. So it still boils down to, orientation of, the players, the persons involved, families, the communities, religious bodies, hospital. Hospitals should know, the doctors, the nurses, the workers, the medical personnel, they should know that it is their duty to treat, to report any case of abuse, to protect these victims or survivors, to be confidential in their, affairs. And then the government should equip, we've talked about, structural, accessibility, to equip the hospital, not just equipping the hospital structurally, equipping them with items that are needed. If a blind person comes to the hospital, the person should be able to get, treatment, to get access to, the services that the hospitals or any public places are giving. If a deaf person comes, the person should be able to meet a medical personnel that will understand him or her and offer the correct services. So these places, these public places should be, equipped. And then there should also be, physiological, or psychological help, psychosocial help, therapy, counseling that should, in case there is, a case of abuse, with regards to, women living with disabilities, they should feel safe enough to call for help. They should know that, they will not be stigmatized when they call for help, that they will get the actual help that they deserve. Then Nigerians are good at making laws. We have laws against discrimination against, persons living with disabilities. We have violence against persons, but the question is, are these laws implemented? The main issue of focus should be implementation of these laws, the ones that we have, before we even talk about, gaps that should be filled with laws. Now, we have anti-stigma laws, but how many of them are implemented? People living with disabilities, women living with disabilities still face stigma every day from the public, from, persons that should even encourage them, from their family, from schools, from religious bodies, from, hospitals, even police that should, help them. These people, so now what is being done? I recommend that this law should be taken seriously. It should be implemented. If anybody should be punished for, discriminating against persons or women living with disabilities, the person should be punished. Others will learn. And then we also need, I also recommend, I mean, we've talked and stressed about accessibility to public places, public structures, the police, even workplaces. Are these structures even accessible to persons living with disabilities? We've talked about even the police. When you go to seek for justice, most police stations don't even include, maybe they don't have it in mind that persons living with disability will come to report cases of abuse or discrimination or anything. Police stations are not even accessible. I'm recommending that when you say public places, the Act has already stated that public places should be accessible to every person living with disability. Sorry. Now, when you said it should not just be in the act, you should also, the government should go extra mile to implement, because this thing is even government properties. So if the government does not even implement these things, how do you expect, private persons to implement them? If you say implement, it should be implemented. If you say make this place accessible to both the blind, the deaf, and everybody, it should be accessible. And then when they also come, they should be able to be understood. So I'm recommending that there is a unit or a department in the police that deals with gender-based violence and children and minority, but none at all. There is no department that deals with, persons living with disability. I recommend that there should be. It is not just enough, to create, gender-based, department. There should be a department. This thing now, the aim of this of the creation of this department is that it will aid in fast tracking the cases that these survivors have. So when I want to go to a police station, or I have a case I need to report, I don't need to stress myself about the movement. They can have helplines that when I call, there'll be there'll be a speedy response to my complaints. They should have that department, a functional department that will come to the aid of survivors. Create this department. It will help in fast tracking any case that they have. It will help them, give them ease of access. Because if a blind person wants to have any, complaints that he or she wants to come to the police to report, and then there's no means that the person will even, get there, it's difficult. If there are helplines and then there are departments in the police that have, that it is their work to look into this thing, it will make it easier. Then it doesn't just end in creating this department. They should also be trained with disability laws. They should be abreast with the workings. They should be sensitive to some of these things. They should be sensitive to what they are supposed to do, not just the normal police method of coming to write. You go and write your complaints. You go and write. They will waste your time. They will take money from you. Before they even start investigation, you as a complainant, you're already tired. So the essence of creating this department is to ease all these barriers, all this stress that would discourage someone to seek justice. So okay, the next thing I want to talk about is that when in access to justice, okay, I've recommended GBV units in the police. The government can as well include these units even in other public sectors. So it's not just the police. Organizations, they should always consider, women living with disabilities. The rights, the policies that they make should also consider women living with disabilities. So there should be, we've talked about total reform and orientation at the police, at the community level. So when because why I'm talking about police is because most times that is where seeking justice, starts from. So most times we have cases of the police dismissing, these individuals because they feel they may be trying to protect them from stigma or what people will say and all that. And most times you see that the offenders, they go scot-free. Nobody does anything to them because the police and the family are trying to, protect the victim. Now, there should be an orientation where the police are, that these people, they should carry out their investigation. The fact that they are carrying out their investigation does not mean that they should expose, these victims to stress, to stigma, to intimidation. It is still their job to protect their victims. They should stop dismissing cases based on what the community feel. The more they dismiss these cases, the more other persons find the effrontery to keep up with the abuse, to keep up with discrimination, anything. When they report these cases, police should take it seriously, and carry out their investigation. Make sure that the culprits are brought to book. Then there should be qualified persons in the police or all these agencies and parastatals. So there should be professionals, there should be an equipped department. We've talked about fast tracking of the cases. Let me also use this opportunity to talk about Ministry of Justice and their work. When you talk about access to justice and it comes to going to court, we all know how expensive it can be, the cost of litigation. So there is in most, the Federal Ministry of Justice, and then in some Ministry of Justices in different states. For instance, in Abia State, we have a GBV unit. And do you want to say something? We have a GBV unit, and then we have a unit called Citizens' Rights Unit, where if you cannot afford litigation or you cannot afford justice, you can walk up to some of these departments and then they take up your cases, not minding whether you are a person living with disability, even if you are a woman or a girl living with disabilities. So you can get free services, but they should also pay more attention to, persons living with disabilities too, so that when they come, any form of disabilities, the states can take up, equip these departments to take up cases like this, and not just taking up the cases, to make sure they bring it to an end. So, and then some of these laws that these acts, the VAP Act, most states should also domesticate it. The one for violence against persons living against women, and then discrimination acts for persons living with disabilities. The states that have not domesticated these laws should domesticate it. It will aid easy access to justice. Let me quickly talk about, just state some things I have here because I'm watching my time. I know you are giving me signs. So human rights organizations should help in fundamental rights actions, just like, Ministry of Justice, we have FIDA, we have WACA. So when you talk about human rights, if a person living with disability is discriminated against, maybe a job that you deserve is not given to you, or any form of discrimination, you can come to human rights organizations. But we also advocate for specification for, like, when you talk about human rights, there should be organizations set up, government parastatals set up to fight for women living with disability. That is what we are doing here. That is what we are advocating for. And then enforce discrimination by ensuring accessibility to justice, to structure reporting of these cases, justice procedure. We also recommend for states to implement disability inclusive response centers in every state. And so in every state, not just at the national level, there should be, or even in every city, there should be a center, a disability inclusive GBV response center, not just, GBV centers. It should be accessible. It should be located at the grassroots level so that anybody at any time will be able to access it. We've talked about training police and social workers on disability rights. So, and then enforcement, I'm not going to stop talking about enforcement because, like I said before, some of these rights already exist. It's now to enforce them. The government should provide means for enforcing. There are so many cases of, abuse. There are so many cases against, women living with disability, but nobody enforces this thing. I can remember something that happened. I was telling a friend the other time. There is this lady in my village that has, slight mental disability, and you know that when a person has mental disability, the person cannot give consent for intercourse. When we were quite younger, every time we come back to the village, we find out that is either she's pregnant or she's nursing a baby. Is either she's pregnant. Up until when we grew up, became adults, she was still doing the same thing. That was when I realized that, oh, this girl was a child when or if she started betting, because it's been years and then she's still betting. That means this is an abuse. She was a child and then she can't give consent even if she's an adult. And what happened? Nobody has done anything about it. Nobody has been arrested. No, the family has not even reported the case before in anywhere. Nobody has been arrested, nobody has been tried, and nobody has been convicted. Now, the question is, how do we make reporting some of these offenses mandatory? Is it possible to make reporting mandatory when there is a case of non-reporting or insufficient reporting and capturing of data? How will the government come in? How will organizations come in to make sure that people involved will be able to report these cases? That's what we want to look at. Now, it is my recommendation, as funny as it may be, to make it mandatory. When you see and you do not talk, you will also be held liable for the same offense. The police should be proactive. Organizations like this one should be proactive to make sure that most of the people who default in this, and family members, communities, religious organizations, they should be brought to book. They should have things to answer. Because when you leave some of these things to go on, it will just continue to go on. If you say, oh, they have not reported now, so we will not do anything about it. If this thing can happen to that lady, Anayo, I'm sure it's happening. The same thing is happening in many other communities, and that's how every other person keeps quiet, because nobody is reporting. So there should be a law that will handle the issue of not reporting or issue of suppression or intimidation against women living with disabilities. Okay, the acts for the Anti-Discrimination Act against people living with disabilities has introduced so many laws, so many parts.
Actually, I would
Yes,
have at this point, because we're running up on time.
Okay.
For that wonderful session, and thank you for your recommendations. We got your recommendations already. I'm going to give the floor to Eva to give our recommendation now.
Okay.
What she's recommending for the CSW70 and over. Then after she's done, Barrister Confidence will take over. Eva, over to you, please.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so straight to the point. So my recommendation is very simple. So it is that no policy, no program, and no decision about women with disabilities should be made without our meaningful participation. So at every stage, from planning stage to execution stage, women with disabilities or persons with disabilities should be part of every decision. So that's just my recommendation.
What a powerful recommendation, and I totally agree with you on that. I even would like to even add that it will be best if they are also part of the committee for whatever planning that is being made for any program for people, women, especially women in the inclusive community. Okay, we're going to go straight to Barrister Confidence. Please give your recommendation as well. Thank you very much.
All right. I would like to say that eliminating discriminatory laws and building inclusive, equitable justice system is not optional. It is a foundational, and it is foundational to ensuring that women and girls, especially those with disabilities, can access justice in meaningful ways. And I recommend that laws should be reviewed and the necessary ones should be repealed. And there has to be promotion of gender equality and protections of children's rights, rights with women's rights and people with disabilities. I also talked about the national and international space should be taken seriously with eliminating discriminatory laws and policies. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Just a recap of the recommendations a bit. We try to summarize and paraphrase as much as possible. Talking about inclusion of persons with disabilities in respect to programs that are in that are being made for them. They should be, their decisions should be part of the decision making. But importantly, I think they should also be part of the committee planning. Talked about policies that Barrister Confidence is giving. They should take total adhere to the policies, as well as create policies and eliminate whatever policies that are not in favor of this persons with disabilities, and whatever should be reviewed. And just like Barrister Chinyere has mentioned, well, in respect to mandatory laws that should be put in place, you know, I think these are powerful recommendations, and I hope that the government is hearing. I hope that private persons are hearing, and most importantly, I'm hoping that the UN and the global nations are paying attention to this conversation and will, you know, do the necessary, put the necessary things in place that are needed. I want to say a very big thank you from the depths of our hearts and from Skill Build Initiative to our speakers, Barrister Confidence, Eva, and Barrister Chinyere. We really appreciate you taking our time to talk intensively and extensively on each session on the topics and themes that you were given this morning to discuss on. We really appreciate it. I also want to say a very big thank you to Skill Build for taking the initiative and contributing to the conversation on this national youth in respect to the CSW70 process. I want to say big thank you to the participants that have stayed with us from the beginning down to this time. We really, really, truly appreciate you. We thank you for being a part of it, and we thank you for lending your voices. And we hope that you will continue to lend your voices in respect to the conversations that we are having in respect to the inclusive society and community. And we hope that there will be a change. We hope that there will be a global change. We hope that you would strive, and we hope that the government and private enterprise and even you and I would do what is needful in this time to help the inclusive society receive the value they need and for their voices to be heard globally. All right, we've come to the end of today's conversation. We hope to have better conversation in the future in respect to the inclusive community. My name is Joy Udo. I've been your moderator, and I'm wishing you a wonderful, wonderful day. Until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
I recommend building a capacity institution to implement and enforce laws and policies.